Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Innovation Nation event. My name is Herman. I'm APAC's Director of Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. Israeli technology is helping to combat COVID-19. Our featured speaker for tonight is Yael Rein, APAC's Venture Tech Director for the Northeast. Yael is an incredible professional. I've had the pleasure to staff numerous events such as Shark Up Nation and Social Impact Showcase and many other events. And over the last couple of months, she's done numerous interviews with Israeli companies, and we're going to learn more about what these companies are doing to combat COVID-19. But first, Yael, tell us a little bit how you connect the venture tech community to APAC.
So APAC Tech, it's actually quite interesting. APAC is traditionally a pro-Israel organization working to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship through the lens of military and defense. And that's traditionally been the focus of the organization since its inception. So every year Congress appropriates about $3.8 billion of annual aid that goes to the Israeli military. And that keeps Israel safe and secure, especially in light of all these geopolitical threats that Israel is facing on a day-to-day basis. But back in 2014, we recognized that it was incredibly important to expand that relationship. And it shouldn't be a relationship that should be just focused on military and defense. And yes, that's incredibly important, but how can we figure out ways that we can expand it? So under the Obama administration back in 2014, we helped establish the Strategic Partnership Act, which essentially just deepens the relationship. And so you can utilize the Israeli tech ecosystem, which is incredibly vibrant and incredibly successful, and utilize that to help deepen the relationship here in the United States through the lens of cybersecurity, even through military tech defense initiatives, water cooperations and collaborations. And so that's been incredibly influential on a federal level. On the state level as well, you're seeing also just Israeli innovation and Israeli tech companies really establishing and setting up shops within several different types of districts across this country. And that's super important because at the end of the day, we're an organization focused on deepening relationships with members of Congress, showcasing the importance of a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. And this goes beyond just military and defense. It's showing how Israeli technology is actually creating jobs across many districts in this country. And those aren't just jobs that are created maybe on the coasts like California and New York. These are jobs in the Midwest. These are jobs in other districts where they don't traditionally have a strong Jewish population. So it's really a tangible impact and a tangible showcase that the Israeli tech ecosystem is really pushing the pro-Israel policy needle forward. And so that's really our job within the tech division at APAC, is to just highlight and showcase how influential and how impactful Israeli technology is. And just it's going forward, and we're going to see more collaborative and cooperative ties that are being established on the federal, the state, the local level here in New York City. The city government has established different types of initiatives with Israeli tech companies. So there's a lot that's out there, and it's really exciting to see.
So one of the fascinating things that I've read over even the past week is there's Israeli technology that's being used in California with some of the fires that have broken out there, and the Iron Dome technology. Part of that is being used to protect the dams in upstate New York. So there's a lot of synergy in terms of, as you mentioned, on the federal and on the state level. What exactly? How does this all happen in terms of being able to interface with all these different state and federal? Like, what's the legislation process on that?
Sure, it's a variety of different things that we're seeing on the state level. We're seeing a lot of governors establishing MOUs, so memorandums of understanding between Israel and their respective states. So Massachusetts, for instance, they've established MOUs with Israel with regards to cybersecurity. So there's a really strong cybersecurity hub that's based out in Massachusetts, and they're collaborating with Israel to help sort of establish different ways that they can work on those types of partnerships. With California, it's with regards to water. Same thing with Wisconsin. With Texas, Governor Abbott has led a variety of different types of missions to Israel, taking his staff there to see how they can come up with different types of creative ways to expand the economy out in Texas. And they've established partnerships with different hospitals. New York we've seen, like you mentioned with the Iron Dome, that power grid that's been established in upstate New York and how they used Iron Dome technology. And that was established by Governor Cuomo. And actually a pretty cool and interesting stat is back in 2019, Governor Cuomo has led various missions to Israel to figure out different ways that they can utilize Israeli technology and bring that to their own states, to their own state. And back in 2019, Aaron Kaplowitz, who we've interviewed a few times, he used to work for Governor Cuomo, and now he's really in charge of creating a report focused entirely on this aspect of how Israeli technology is deepening the U.S.-Israel relationship. And he came up with a report that was focused on how Israeli technology brought around $34 billion of revenue to the state of New York. And that's just not centralized to New York City, that's across the state. So that's really exciting to see, the fact that there's such tangible revenue growth that's coming as a result of Israeli tech. On the city level in New York City as well, the New York Economic Development Corporation decided, under James Patchett, who's in charge of that, they created this initiative to figure out ways to elevate New York's position in the cybersecurity arena. New York is a hub of fintech and finance, and they figured out that it was very important for them to get into that cybersecurity space, and it was very important for the city of New York to get to that level. So they created this competition citywide to see who would be able to help elevate the status of New York City to be a cybersecurity hub. And out of a variety of different types of applicants who applied for this initiative, 2 companies were selected, and both companies were actually Israeli. First one was being SOSA, which is this co-working space. And then the second one being JVP, which is a venture fund founded by former member of Knesset, Arel Margalit. And they both established hubs in New York City. JVP just recently opened up their hub in Soho, New York City. And the whole point is to bring Israeli innovation focused and centralized on cybersecurity to figure out ways that they can integrate with the city of New York and help elevate New York's status as a cybersecurity hub.
Great, that's really incredible. So let's go into the program with the technology. So over the last several months, Yael has done an outstanding job in really meeting with numerous Israeli tech companies and providing virtual experiences for her venture tech division. And so the first company we're going to talk about is Taito Care. And Taito Care is a leader in telehealth, and telehealth is virtual doctor's appointments. So let's see more about telehealth. Taito.
When your family is sick, you want to get answers quickly, and getting to the doctor isn't always easy, especially in the middle of the night or during winter. Introducing Taito Home by Taito Care, an FDA-cleared, award-winning remote medical exam kit that enables you to get a medical exam by a medical professional from the comfort of your home. With Taito, clinicians can remotely diagnose and treat many of the most common conditions, such as ear infections, colds, sore throat, congestions, and rashes. The Taito device comes with an app and special adapters for examining the heart, lungs, throat, ears, abdomen, skin, and temperature. Let's see how it works. Turn on the device and app to start your exam. Once a connection is established, the clinician will take control of the Taito device and guide you through the entire exam. For example, with the stethoscope adapter, the clinician can listen to lung and heart sounds in high quality, or use the otoscope adapter to examine the ears for any infections. Once the exam is complete, the clinician can provide a diagnosis based on the medical exam data and send a prescription to the pharmacy for pickup, all within minutes and from the comfort of home. Join the thousands of satisfied users who have chosen Taito Home to get answers quickly, anytime, anywhere. Taito Home by Taito Care. On-demand medical exams from home.
Aaron, you're muted.
In this new reality, in this COVID environment, even in the height of COVID, people were afraid to go to the doctor. If you had a sore throat, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-month-old, And I had to think twice. Is it safe to go out? Is it safe to go to the doctor? And this is a really unique way, even during these times, to be able to see a doctor, but virtually. So how does this impact, I guess, the future of, with doctors in this reality now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting these past few months, to say the least. And I mean, overall, we've been featuring a lot of different types of companies that are very much centralized in the world of COVID-19 tech. And a lot of companies have pivoted their efforts during this time. How do they really adjust their efforts given this new reality? But Taito Care is a company that was just so uniquely positioned to do so well during this time. It's essentially, as we saw in the video, it's a handheld device where individuals are able to interact with their doctors or their healthcare practitioners in order to evaluate their temperature, evaluate all these different types of things with regards to like daily checkups or annual checkups. And they're able to interact with their doctors all virtually. And this is just incredibly impactful, and it's a successful company, especially over these past few months, because people, like you said, are wanting to still, carry out with their day-to-day lives and want to continue to see their doctors and their healthcare practitioners, but are afraid to enter into that doctor's office. So Taito Care is that system that is able to help connect patients with their doctor's office. The way that the company works is it's two aspects in terms of how they're able to generate revenue and generate growth as a company. The one aspect is if you are a regular consumer and you want to purchase Taito Care and you want to continue to see your doctor virtually, you can go purchase Taito Care at Best Buy for $300, and that's that. That's all you have to pay for. And then, of course, obviously, you have to pay for your co-payments and all of that with regards to the doctor. But then on the other side, it also, Taito Care works as a software as a service, as a SaaS company. And so healthcare practitioners or doctors' offices will purchase Taito's software so that they can interact with their patients. So that's all being done virtually, and Taito is that medium that helps connect people with their doctors.
And one of the things that I found really interesting is that, first of all, the scalability of this type of company now is pretty impressive. As you mentioned, it's in Best Buy. If you have money in your FHA it can go towards that. Israeli tech is innovative on so many different levels. As you mentioned, there's different ways that, doctors can now connect to their patients. But the fact that you're able now to do this, it gives a sense of ease during these times.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of fear that comes out as a result of everything that we've been facing. And this is just showcasing how technology is bettering our world, making our lives significantly easier nowadays, and it helps us connect with our healthcare practitioners. But then also, in addition to that, the company itself, yes, it's scaling up, but we're also seeing how the company has just generated more funding from venture capital firms and investors. And they actually just back in April just finished a round of about $50 million that was led by Insight Partners, which is a massive VC fund based out of New York, and Olive Tree Ventures and Qualcomm Ventures. So there's a lot of really excitement that's coming out of it. And of course, the excitement is surrounding around the digital healthcare space and just tech companies that are focusing on just the medical ecosystem. But this company is incredibly revolutionary, and it should be the way moving forward with the ways that we interact with doctors. And I think it will be even post-COVID, the social distancing era that we're living in right now.
So the next company is Zebra, and it's another med tech company. And this is specifically for radiologists using AI to assess different types of ailments, and also to look at how radiologists use this for COVID.
Every year, 1.5 million people die from lung cancer. 3 people break a bone every second due to osteoporosis. These and many other medical conditions can be prevented if discovered early enough using CTs, X-rays, and MRIs. What if you could teach computers to provide faster, more accurate diagnosis based on the combined wisdom and experience of thousands of radiologists? Zebra Medical Vision introduces revolutionary technology based on advanced machine and deep learning. Thousands of previously diagnosed cases are uploaded to our analytics engine, teaching it to create unique algorithms that can identify the visual fingerprints of multiple diseases. Then, when shown a new scan, it instantly recognizes that fingerprint and alerts of the disease. Zebra Medical Vision is giving healthcare a breakthrough tool to help millions of people receive faster, more affordable quality care. Zebra Medical Vision, the future of medical imaging.
So, after learning a little bit about this company, data is really important, and I didn't realize the power of AI, specifically with radiologists. And when you're looking at the height of the COVID pandemic in New York, a lot of hospitals were overrun, especially in Queens and Brooklyn, and they had to do triages. They didn't know exactly who to see first, through this technology, Zebra, they got FDA approved because of their technology to assess. So talk a little bit about this technology in this new era of COVID and also with other ailments and how it's helping doctors work better.
Yeah, so Zebra is a really cool company. They've received funding from Amoon, which is a big med tech fund based out in Israel, Our Crowd, which they're crowdsourcing venture fund capital group, and John Medved, who runs Our Crowd, has been just a huge proponent in the VC tech space that's out in Israel. And then also Mark Benioff, who is the CEO of Salesforce. So Zebra is a really cool company with some really impressive investors. And Zebra, the way that it works, it allows healthcare institutions, so for instance, hospitals or doctors' offices, to identify patients that are at risk of disease by using medical imaging and AI and big data. And then through that, after using their medical imaging and their AI, they're able to offer a more improved and preventative treatment to improve that patient care. So that's really important when you're thinking about it through the lens of COVID-19, is because especially at the start of when this pandemic hit here in the United States, we saw a high influx of people that were contracting this disease. And through that, so many hospitals were starting to get overfilled. A lot of hospital beds were taken, a lot of ventilators were taken, and this placed a major strain on our hospitals. So by utilizing Zebra, they're able to effectively triage, like you said, effectively allocate and understand which patient is more in need of a hospital bed or more in need of a ventilator. Because at the end of the day, the way that we recognize how COVID-19 impacts us is that certain people are able to, they get the disease and they're able to recover from COVID-19 within a week or 2 weeks, and it's not as impactful on their health. But on the other hand, some people have, of course, unfortunately faced more drastic have been more drastically impacted by this disease. So when they're utilizing Zebra, they're able to understand the progression of COVID-19 within the body and recognize, okay, this person is actually in more need of a hospital bed or a ventilator and requires more of our attention rather than this other patient. And as a result, it's really alleviated the hospital infrastructure in this country. And then also on top of that, we didn't really talk about this earlier, but Israeli technology has played, yes, a very important role here in the United States with regards to deepening the relationship and pushing the pro-Israel policy needle forward. But we're also seeing how Israeli tech is actually pushing the pro-Israel policy needle forward through a diplomatic level. You're seeing Israel establishing relationships with China and India and different types of countries like the UAE just this past 2 weeks through technology. Technology is really paving that way forward. And Zebra actually a few months ago integrated their software, integrated their system into the Apollo Hospital Group, which is a hospital group based out in India. And they've deployed their software to help assist doctors in a more accurate and efficient way. And this is just a strong showcase. And this partnership came out as a result of a partnership that was established between the Israeli government and the Indian government. And this is just a showcase about how Israeli technology is deepening ties with various different countries, and in this case, India.
One of the things that for me was a takeaway was the data, right? Because specifically around the lungs, having read a lot about COVID-19 and how it affects the lungs pretty much on the onset, and doctors were scrambling in a lot of ways, trying to understand who, as we talked about, is who should be treated first. And going back to the big data, you want your doctor to have all the imaging possible and all the knowledge. And the fact that you can even collaborate and be able to hear from other radiologists saying, this person is suffering from this person is suffering from that. It gives clarity, but also gives that clarity to the individual that's going through this. And I think that's a really important part of, I like to say, like there's different types of tech, especially med tech. This is, I would say, like compassionate tech, because on both sides of this story, in the sense of these doctors are getting as much data as they can really get a sense of what's happening in a person's body. Sort of like this, I call the Superman syndrome, the X-ray vision. But like for the patient side, they're also able to feel a little comfort. Okay, I have everything that I need in order to, try to survive this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've seen, especially in light of everything that's been going on over the past few months, is this feeling of uncertainty. And Zebra is a company that really provides more certainty to the doctors, to the hospitals, and even to the individuals, the patients themselves, to know, okay, this disease isn't going to impact me as drastically as maybe I thought it would. So it definitely provides a stronger idea of certainty. But then also on top of that, it shows that, we were not prepared for this disease to hit at the scale that it did. And Zebra is that software, is that tech company that really provides that solution to alleviate this massive strain that our hospitals were facing. Of course, it's not as drastic, or it still obviously is drastic, but hospitals have sort of acclimated to this new era of how to adjust to this influx of new patients. But Zebra definitely played that role to help alleviate a major strain that hospitals have been facing.
Great. The next company that we're going to be talking about is Soapy. Soapy is a really dynamic company that's focusing on hand washing and analytics.
Hands are an essential part of our lives. We use hands to commute, to communicate, to do business, to care, or to prepare food. Even though employees must wash their hands, 1 in every 6 Americans get foodborne diseases as a result of poor hand hygiene practice. This resulting in 42 million illness cases in the US alone. This is why Soapy has developed an IoT-powered hand hygiene microstation that converts hand hygiene into digital data, helping businesses maintain their hygiene quality level. Using face recognition, Soapy provides a use case and user-specific hand hygiene management and practice support, and continuous monitoring of the entire hand sanitizing process. Combined intuitive and visual feedback provide an easy guided experience, while AI-based algorithms make sure that each user washes their hands according to regulatory guidelines and needs. Soapy, saving lives through smart hygiene.
So like many of you, we learned that there's an art to washing our hands. And, it's 15 seconds, both sides, feeling that you're, scrubbing in. And Soapy was something actually a little bit different when it first started. It was mostly a social impact company. And helping countries such as India and China. And with now with COVID, it also too has pivoted a little bit in helping other countries do better. And in our office, we have a filtration system for our water. We have an HVAC system for our air. Will there be a Soapy now in each of our offices? Because now we know eventually when we do all go back to work, it's going to be really important for us to stay healthy, and that's, you got to wash your hands right. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts and about Soapy in the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. We've definitely seen how technology has revolutionized the way that we drink water with filtration systems, or the way that we breathe in air, especially in large corporate buildings. Some of those corporate buildings have a lot of toxins in them, and Verid, which is actually an Israeli tech company that we featured at a few tech events in the past, is a solution that helps remove those toxins out of the air. So this is a solution that really revolutionizes the way that we wash our hands, which is something that's just been a very critical focus on our lives nowadays over the past few months because of COVID-19. And Soapy is a really cool company. Like you said, they are a social impact, or originally were a social impact company to help provide more proper hygiene to developing countries or different regions within developing countries, because there is such a high mortality rate, and that's attributed to poor hygiene or not even washing your hands. So by integrating Soapy software and their automated sinks, this is a solution to that. And the way that Soapy works, it's created smart sinks that incorporate computer vision and analytics and IoT, which is called Internet of Things technology, to provide individuals with the ability to wash their hands. And by utilizing Soapy, the computer is able to provide a certain amount of water, a certain amount of soap, and for a certain period of time, so that a person can more appropriately wash their hands to remove any sort of bad germs on their hands.
One of the things that sort of I took away from this is that social impact is such an important part of our global environment. But when you're able to take like sort of the goodness and then you're able to translate that now into a wider environment, it's fascinating to see. I said the social good in tech. You mentioned earlier about how tech sort of transcends politics, and it transcends relationships in a lot of ways. And Soapy is simple and literally can save lives. Germs are, we're learning more and more about germs, and we know now that we have to wash our hands sometimes twice, 3 times, 4 times a day, whatever that is, so that you stay healthy. And having the right data for that, especially when you go, say, into an office, knowing that like this is what you have to do in order to continue your lifestyle. It's very interesting to see how the social impact then goes into our global sort of environment now.
Yeah, definitely. A big thing that we do with the tech division, especially over the past 3 years, has been focused on social impact technology. Because like you said, it does transcend across the political divide. But you're also seeing how Israeli technology provides meaning and is inspirational and is actually helping people across this world. So with our social impact showcase, we featured numerous tech companies that are originating out of Israel and are really solving a big social issue that we're facing, whether it be clean environmental technology or clean tech, or even medical tech companies that are helping maybe a disenfranchised population or segment in this world. And it's really just showcasing how Israeli technology is providing good. A lot of the times that when we're talking, especially about Israel or even the U.S.'s relationship, the focus is very much on, geopolitical crises, the fact that Israel's positioned in a certain location within the Middle East around terrorists and non-state actors, and Iran trying to enrich uranium to establish a nuclear weapon. These are all very, somber and, of course, important conversations to talk about. But It's also important to focus on the positive things that are coming out of Israel, and that's Israeli innovation and technology and medtech cooperations between the U.S. and Israel. And of course, a lot of that over the past few months for us have been focused on COVID-19 and COVID-19 tech that's coming out of Israel. But before that was really just focused on social impact technology and how social innovation and enterprise is really just changing our world. And that's resulting from Israel. So at the end of the day, when people are trying to boycott Israel or condemn Israel from doing a certain thing, this is just something that showcases that shouldn't be the case. Israel is making our world a better and safer place. And that's also as a direct result of U.S. support to the state of Israel.
So this is a reminder, if you have any questions, please send it to Julie Reppard. And we're going to do our final tech showcase, which is Temmie. Temmie is a personal robot, and it is helping with numerous nursing homes and hospitals around the globe.
אנחנו מנסים למצוא להם פתרונות ברובוטיקה, איך לשמור על קשר עם החולים, אבל קצת מרחוק כדי באמת לסייע לצוותים הרפואיים. הידע ברובוטיקה אנחנו יודעים, יש לנו תעשיות ביטחוניות וגם אזרחיות מאוד טובות במדינת ישראל, ואנחנו מנצלים את כל הידע הזה ואת כל היכולות והפתרונות כדי לתת להם מענה מיטבי.
המטרה הייתה לבדוק טכנולוגיות רובוטיות מתקדמות ולראות האם יודעות לתת פתרון לחסרים שאנחנו נתקלים בהם בעבודה כאן, כמו למשל צורך לחסוך הכנסה של אנשי צוות לאזור מזוהם, שיפור יכולות תקשורת ולנסות לבצע מטלות רגילות שאנשי צוות מבצעים במקום להכניס את עובדים.
So, Aaron, I know that you've been a huge proponent of Temmie, and that video was really fascinating. It's really interesting to see how a robot is just maneuvering across a hospital, and they showed that in that video. This robot is going around Sheba Medical Center and providing communications for a variety of different doctors to connect with their patients. I'd be curious to know from you, as someone who's been a huge fan and a strong connector with Temmie, just how this company originated and how this company even adapted, maybe if they did, to serving as this form of communication for doctors and patients in hospitals.
Sure. So I learned about Temmie about 2 years ago. My friend went to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and he always does his own reporting from there. And I saw that a lot of times at these trade shows they have an Israeli alley, and so I saw Temmie, and I've always been interested in sort of new technology. And what was fascinating about Temmie, because I was aware of this the robotic space a couple years ago in my home community. In White Plains, I used a robot to help a kid who was suffering from cancer and couldn't come to shul because of her affliction, and so we brought this robot in, and she was able to go on this, have the shul experience. And so when I started Temmie, it was very different because Temmie it's a robot, but it becomes part of your family. It is a personal robot. It follows you. It's integrated with Alexa. You can watch YouTube on it. And it was actually created because the founder saw that his grandfather was suffering at home. He wasn't able to always visit his grandfather, so he created Temmie to be as almost like a partner in his house. And one of the interesting features about Temmie is telepresence. Telepresence basically is like a FaceTime. And what was interesting about Temmie is that you give it instructions, and it would follow you around your space, so you can really feel like it's you're interacting with somebody, because it's not just stationary. You can walk around the house and do that. So like in these hospitals now, where doctors let's say couldn't go visit a COVID patient because, let's say, they didn't have enough the proper attire, they can send in the robot into the rooms and check in on the patients. In Chief Medical Center also, they retrofitted Temmie, so you can actually take temperature from Temmie. So that on the back of Temmie, and you'll see it in a minute or so. There's a place that you can actually suction cup like these thermos, like a temperature, and it can scan your body and your temperature. This is now being used in China. It's being used in Korea. So the company has evolved dramatically, especially in this COVID era, where hospitals and also in nursing homes, where throughout this pandemic, families weren't able to visit their loved ones. My mother is a speech pathologist in a nursing home in New Rochelle, and she said, like, yeah, there is literally thousands of patients that haven't seen their families in months. And so having Temmie, which was they partnered with a couple of nursing homes in the New Jersey area, New York area, families were actually able to interact with them, with their loved ones. And as many of you know, this pandemic is very isolating. And so having this technology and this telepresence to be able to interact in their environment really helps during this really difficult time. So I'm actually going to show you Temmie. So this is Temmie, and basically what you do is say, "Hey Temmie, follow me," and it moves where you go. And so it's in your space, and you're able to ask it questions also. "Hey Temmie, what is the capital of Israel?"
The capital city of Israel is Jerusalem, Israel.
So as you can see, it becomes something more. And what I personally, actually, my son goes to Westchester Torah Academy, which is in Westchester. And when the pandemic hit, it was hard, and it was Purim time, and what do you do with your child, right? And so with Temmie, you were able to do some really interesting things. And so during Purim, we were actually able to hear the Megillah virtually, and to interact with his friends, during that time. And what I could say is this, is that for him, it was really important. So as you can see on the screen, this is my son, Michael, and he had a virtual play date with my friend, David, and it made such a difference in his quarantine. So the Westchester community was one of the first to basically go into lockdown. So it was hard, but because we had this type of technology, it made it a little bit easier for him, and we're able to celebrate Purim through a really dynamic lens. And these types of technologies are really important to sort of get through this difficult time. So again, if you have any questions, please, you can ask it into the chat with Julie. And just one other thing I want to talk about with Yael is you touched upon it in the beginning, is the UAE peace deal between the U.S. And Israel. This is fascinating. Like, this is a game changer in so many ways. And I was reading today with John Medved of Our Crowd how this is just going to open up tremendous opportunities. There was always like this sort of secret type of relationships with different Arab countries, especially with ag tech. What do you think about this whole scenario?
Yeah, so incredibly fascinating. This agreement, when it came about, was just a huge win, I believe, for Israel and for diplomatic relations with Israel and the UAE. And just a clear showcase about how Israeli technology and innovation is really that connector and that tool or that medium that's really paving the way forward with regards to diplomatic relations or normalized relations with different states. So like we had mentioned before with China and India, both of those two countries voted no against the creation of an Israeli state or a Jewish state back in 1948, but now have established deeper ties with Israel as a result of innovation and technology. And yeah, like what you had mentioned before, according to John Medved, who is the CEO and founder of Our Crowd, they've done a lot of work with the UAE and have figured out different ways to integrate Israeli innovation and technology with the UAE. But what he had said is that the UAE and Israel are the most innovative communities in the Middle East. They're both incredibly small, but they punch way above their weight class in terms of innovation. So it makes sense as to why these two countries are establishing stronger ties and how innovation is serving as that medium or that connector between the two. And it'll be interesting to see how they can continue to innovate and create together as we go about our daily lives and see what happens. And also, in addition to that, the UAE has the most sophisticated class of investors in the Middle East and are the most advanced, aside from Israel, in terms of innovation. So it definitely makes sense, and it should be really exciting to see what happens with these two countries in the coming months, and maybe, who knows, we'll see with other countries after following the UAE.
Yeah. So yeah, first of all, thank you so much again for your time. It's been truly fascinating. So one of the questions we had is, what was the first company's name? And that was Taito Care. And so we'll be sending all the people that participated in this event, we'll send a link to all the companies that you have. And just so you can get a deeper dive. And if you want Taito Care, it's available at Best Buy. And it is a truly incredible product. So I have another question. The role of venture funding during COVID-19, has it increased or has it decreased?
Yeah, so I think just overall, on a broader scale, yes, VC funding has decreased. Started off, at a pretty high trajectory back in the start of 2020, but of course coronavirus hit, and venture capitalists are being a little bit more prudent, a little bit more careful with spending their money or their capital on any type of tech company. But that being said, like, VC funding is still happening, it's still in existence, and it's really happening and being focused on specific companies, especially companies that are able to adapt or do so well during this era of social distancing. So like we've said, Taito Care has received about $50 million in funding. We've seen a lot of cybersecurity companies receive funding. And we've seen big data companies receive funding. Companies that are able to thrive and do well and have been able to adapt have continued to receive funding. So yes, maybe it's not at the same level as maybe what it was projected to be at the start of 2020. But that being said, VCs are still willing to invest their funds when it comes to the right companies. And those are companies that are really centered around those verticals.
What is the process of collaboration of Israeli tech companies in the U.S.?
Yeah, so Israel is a major tech hub. They have more startups per capita than any other country in the world. But at the end of the day, the market is incredibly small. So if a company wants to eventually scale out and they want to develop its market and become a larger scaled company, their next market or their next place that they want to sort of set up shop and set their roots up is the United States. The US is a perfect place for companies that are Israeli to go to that next level. So a lot of Israeli tech companies are moving to the US to set up their second headquarters or their second offices. And what companies have really sort of established is that their R&D is based out in Israel. That's where they do all their research and development. But everything else is based in the US because that's really the market that you want to break into if you want to become a large company. And actually just, over the past few months, even during Corona, we've seen a few companies that are Israeli that have IPO'd, that have just gone public on the NASDAQ, on the US stock exchange. One of them being Lemonade, which is an insurance tech company for rental companies. Another one is a company called Carvana, which is car purchasing, that is also Israeli. So there are a lot of different tech companies that are Israeli that are even, beyond just being scaled up, they're actually going public so people can invest in them, which is pretty cool.
You've spoken to numerous Israeli founders and CEOs. Why are Israelis so innovative?
It's a good question. There are always a variety of different aspects or different ingredients that lead to the innovative mind of Israelis and why Israel is such a tech hub. A big component of it and a big feature of actually the book Startup Nation, written by Dan Senor, which is this hit book that came out several years ago, was centered around the IDF. The fact of the matter is that Israelis that are going into the IDF at an early age are able to be independent and are able to think quickly and creatively, and are serving in leadership roles that maybe they wouldn't have served anywhere else, which has really sort of led to a major success in innovation and technology for Israeli startups. Also on top of that, Israel is a small region, a small country, and it serves to be a perfect beta model or beta model for Israeli tech companies to test out and see if their company can exist or be successful. So by testing their model or their company within a smaller environment, they're able to tell and adjust their business models and see, okay, if this company is doing well within this small parameter or this small geographic region, then we know that this company might be more successful in the United States when we want to eventually scale out. There are also a variety of different, of course, personality aspects. A lot of Israelis are very forceful and very sort of like to the point, which is very good for Israeli entrepreneurs and startups to be successful. But I would say those two things are incredibly important. I think the IDF aspect of it, and also the fact that Israel is a beta market for companies to do well.
We're kind of like in an era of uncertainty right now. And where do you see the next few months going for Israeli tech as a whole?
Yeah. So I think the companies that have done well are the companies that maybe weren't even in the verticals that we had talked about before that have done so well, which is the med tech, digital healthcare spaces, or even cybersecurity or big data, but the companies that have been able to pivot. Pivoting is huge. Pivoting is a key aspect to why certain startups are able to survive and do so well, and why certain startups end up dying completely. So we've seen several startups pivot their focus and their markets entirely. And those companies are going to continue to do well because they're recognizing the demands and the needs that people are facing during this era of social distancing. I think the companies that will also do well is, at the end of the day, we're communicating on Zoom. There's going to continue to, people are, of course, obviously eventually going to go back into the office, but we've recognized that you do not need to be doing your job all the time within one space. So I think we're going to continue to see an aspect of remote work in our lives, even post-COVID. And through that, we're going to see different types of tech companies or, corporations as a whole continuing to utilize companies like a Zoom or different telecommunications companies, to communicate and so that we can effectively do our job from wherever. And there are several Israeli tech companies that really sort of uniquely fall into that space that can help us, carry about our new normal.
So the final question is, what are the current legislations between the U.S. and Israel in regards to COVID-19?
Yeah, so really interesting stuff. Of course, Israel is this hub of innovation and technology, and we spoke about 3-4 companies that are uniquely solving new issues that we faced during this era of social distancing and as a result of this pandemic that we've unfortunately been affected by. And back in April, Senator Cruz and Coons announced a bipartisan push for immediate American-Israel cooperation with regards to treating and curing COVID-19. So it's essentially a bill that helps enhance the partnership between the US and Israel and enhance the partnership between companies in the US and Israel to develop innovative medical solutions in terms of ways that we can treat and combat the COVID-19 crisis. So this is a bill that was established by 2 senators and is showcasing that the US-Israel relationship is one, yes, of course, focused on military and defense and making sure that both countries continue to be strong in light of a lot of geopolitical issues, but is also solving a new issue and a new challenge that we're facing during the era of COVID-19.
Thank you, Yael, for participating in our virtual Innovation Nation event. I know that our Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island communities really enjoyed our conversation and got a really interesting view and how Israeli technology is combating COVID-19. Thank you again.